Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very windy evening in January. Today is January 27th. Welcome to our council meeting this evening. This is the second meeting of the brand new year. So we are going to start with the singing of O Canada, and just a warning, Kevin has had to play with it a little bit. There might be a little bit of a gap, or we might be starting right in. But this evening we have for the first time the Caister Central School rendition of O Canada. So please stand if you're able. Well, I hope some of their parents were watching. That was probably not a very easy thing for them to do, and who knows how many takes it took to get it to that point, but we do thank Caister. We'll begin this evening with the land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of Niagara Region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendourong, the Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. I'm also going to back up a little bit to say that just this meeting is the same as it is for all meetings, that at any time during a meeting of our council, the public may submit comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 on the day of the meeting. And any comments submitted will be considered as public information and read into the public record. And a warning to everybody so that you're aware, this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded, and it will be available on the Township's website. So we're going to move then to the opening petition, and Councillor Chichok, you have that this evening.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do. We gather together here today, intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, guided by understanding and wisdom. We seek to serve with respect for all. May our personal faiths give us strength to act honestly and well in all matters before us.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So members of council, are there any changes in order of items on the agenda this evening? Okay, and seeing none, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest? And again, seeing none. On our agenda also, for each meeting, is an area called Request to Address Items on the Agenda. And requests to address items on the agenda are restricted to specific items as follows per section 6.7 of the procedural bylaw. So 6.7, public comment at council, states that there shall be no comments from the public permitted at council unless A, a specific appointment has been scheduled, or B, an item is included under the other business, communications, or appointment sections of the agenda and relates to matters that could be normally dealt with at committee. So are there any members of the gallery here this evening that wish to make comments during this period about items on our agenda? Okay, seeing none. Kevin, are there any people
Not seeing
online?
any, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So next on our agenda would be then an appointment, and we do have an appointment this evening. We have Chief Executive Officer Cindy Weir from our Library Services, and with her is a member of the Library Board, David. I don't know who's doing the presentation. Cindy, are you coming forward first?
I am.
Okay, would you mind then coming? Kevin will help you get your presentation up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, whenever you're ready, Cindy.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council. As mentioned, I'm Cindy Weir, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the West Lincoln Library, while Vanessa Holm is off. You might be more used to seeing Vanessa than I. I have with me tonight David Kurth in attendance. He's one of our board members. Our board chair, Julie Adams, and our vice chair, Wendy Wilson, both send their regrets. They had hoped to be here. We appreciate your time tonight as we present the library's 2025 operating and capital budget. Thank you for the past financial support. Thank you for advocating on behalf of libraries and funding at Roma and AMO. Thank you for ensuring over the years excellent council representation on the library board. Thank you for encouraging a team relationship between the township and the library. The library strategic plan pillars. Grow. We will expand and diversify our collections, materials, and creative workspaces. Develop responsive community service and programs. Enhance our attractive and inviting facilities and outdoor spaces. Increase community access to our services. Increase. Refresh our brand, identity, and logo. Undertake outreach and promotions to engage more community members in our services. Build. Invest in our people through effective development, recognition, retention, and successful planning. Strengthen the library's systems and infrastructure. Improve our financial capacity to better meet the growing population of West Lincoln. You can see from our strategic plan that, like the township, we too are planning for the growth to come. It's not here yet, but we have to start planning now. This will affect our staffing, our collections, service, programs, hours of operation, and facilities. This growth will bring more diversity to our community and a bigger demand on all our services, as people will want at least what they had available before they moved. '24 Library Snapshot. 3 locations: Casterville, Smithville, Wellandport. Combined square footage of 21,073 square feet. At least one branch open every day of the week except Sunday. The library is a corporation under the Public Libraries Act and governed by a board of directors. Not everyone has a computer, a smartphone, or a printer. Our computer usage statistics reflect that, with 4,431 uses in 2024. 49,750 physical items checked out in 2024, with an additional 20,864 e-materials, for a total of 70,614 items circulated. These items include passes to the provincial parks and the Art Gallery of Hamilton, walking sticks, board games, hotspots, jigsaw puzzles, book club kits, to name just a few. People learn to cook, bake, paint, work a Cricut Maker machine, transfer their vinyl records to digital, search their family history, and we have also increased our program partners. Local schools visit for a traditional library tour and/or a demonstration of our makerspace equipment and virtual reality headsets. $121,250 increase over last year to equal $976,410 for 2025. This equals a $20.50 increase over 2024, or $1.71 per month for a residential homeowner. Our pressure points. Wages and benefits are the largest factor in the increase to our budget over last year. The pressure points include the movement of staff on the non-union grid, increase in our wages for our public service assistants, and additional hours to maintain coverage for sick leave, vacation, training, and program service levels. We and the Township are continuing to implement the non-union salary grid. We are also increasing the wages of our public service assistants to more closely come into line with the Niagara Region living wage, which is $20.90 per hour. Public service assistants check materials in and out, open and close the facilities, plan, prepare, execute, and evaluate programs, answer reference questions, assist patrons with their technology, process new materials, handle first-level disputes, prepare materials for transport to our branches and to our link library partners throughout the region. This is just a short list of the things that they do for us. The lack of money from the contingency reserve and the increased amount to the library reserves affects our overall budget. The line for internet at Wellandport has increased in consultation with the IT manager. The internet quality affects our phone lines and the ability of our staff to do their work. We've had complaints from our patrons concerning their ability to use our internet, and we're not able to run tech programs successfully from that location. The increase to the consultant's fee line will help cover legal fees and other consultants. You can see that even with this increase of $2.53, excuse me, they are not at a living wage, but would likely be by 2026. We are currently the lowest wage for this position in Niagara Region, and likely with this increase, we will remain the lowest wage for this position once the other libraries increase to their 2025 wage. We can't blame our trained staff who find other employment within a 50-kilometer area at substantially higher wages. This could be the difference for our staff between having one job or having 3 jobs to make ends meet. When they have more than one job, it makes it more difficult for scheduling, as they are committed to shifts elsewhere. As a result, our shifts are more fluid. We have just moved to a 4-week schedule instead of a 2-week schedule to hopefully provide more stability. From 2021 to 2024, we had 25 resignations for a staff of 18. That staff consists of 1 CEO, 3 manager supervisors, 2 full-time public service assistants, 10 part-time public service assistants, and 2 part-time cleaners to cover 3 branches. Of the 25 resignations, I believe that 21 were public service assistants. We need to retain our people so that we can move on to planning and preparing for the growth to come. The cost identified for onboarding at $4,500 reflects internal staff time to prepare for, interview, select, hire, and the training time by supervisors with the new employee. $2025 capital budget, $186,700. We have the Casterville Library Revitalization Project. We would like to add to our makerspace this year at all 3 locations. The audiovisual and print collections additions total $55,600 system-wide. IT hardware includes $12,000 for replacement computers and equipment on the Township network and $3,000 for the non-network replacements. Our operating and capital budget for 2025 are helping to set us up for the growth the Township and the library are expecting over the foreseeable future. A living wage will help towards a stable, trained workforce, and appropriate collections, facilities, and equipment will help to manage the expectations of our new residents. We want to be a valuable resource to the Township to help facilitate the growth. Our Casterville and Wellandport libraries are community hubs and could host community meetings, disseminate information via digital screens, or be pickup locations for new resident packages of the Township information. There are many ways that the library is able and willing to work with and help the Township, especially during this time of projected growth. Thank you for your support in 2024 and for your anticipated 2025 support. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Cindy. Are you prepared to take some questions?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. So are there any members of council who have questions for the presenter tonight? Councilor Riley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to our, I guess not ours, but the Library Board's CAO. Thank you for the presentation, very informative. I guess my question to you is, you mentioned a few times about the anticipated growth, and we are expecting a lot of growth, primarily in the urban area. And so my question to you, I don't know if it's been discussed at the board or if there's thoughts about it, but understanding where the performance of each library is doing, and if there's any that's underperforming, has there been any talks or at least ideas about what it would look like to maybe close a branch that would allow and free up some capital that would allow you to be able to reinvest that back into maybe the other 2, if it's the case? I don't know what the numbers are, but higher performing, I guess, branches. Has there been any discussion or any thoughts around that? So I'd love to hear it.
We are investigating some of that, and we've actually just put in people counters so that we have a better idea of people. Our
Perfect.
Statistics tend to be around circulation of materials, but that you heard me say tonight over 70,000 items have circulated. But that doesn't tell us what one branch is doing over another, because you might come in and take out one item and I might take out 12. So we're trying to come up with ways to be more accurate with understanding the usage of each location.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was just kind of curious about if you guys have even entertained that or looked into that, because I think as we grow, I agree there's going to be a need. I just am recognizing where that growth's going to happen. If there's, I'm hearing you mention about struggles around retention and being able to pay staff, that if there is one that's underperforming, considering the cost that probably goes into running one of those facilities, if it's really underperforming, then I think it'd be best used to reinvest those finances maybe in the other two more developed areas. So anyways, that's just all I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else? Councillor Maychak?
Yes, just quickly, just to try to get a better handle. How many full-time staff do you have within the 3 locations? And what percentage does that make up of the whole in terms of part-time?
We have 6 full-time, and we have 10 part-time. So that's a little less than half.
All right, thank you.
So just so that, because Councillor Maychak is new, within the last 10 years, I would say, probably fewer years than that, the library actually moved away from a library branch head, and sort of down in each and looked at specialty areas for each of the supervisors so that people who were doing an excellent job program for all 3 branches, that sort of thing. So that changed the number of full-time, but they're used across all 3 branches. I guess, does that make sense, Cindy? I think that the councillor would be new to the community and unaware of that change. Not that the change was necessarily the best way to go, but it is the way we are right now, right? So,
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct.
okay, anything further? Councillor Rayner, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With regards to what Councillor Riley was saying, I drive by the Casterville Library quite often, and most of the time it's closed. And I'm quite surprised. My wife goes there, but she said, you have to check the schedule, because if you don't, you're probably going to turn around and come back with nothing. How often is that library used as compared to others? But even when it is open, I go by, the parking lot's almost empty. Like, is there much activity there at all? And what's the hours of operation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I believe that we are open 20 hours at both Wellandport and Casterville. The hours at Casterville are Tuesday evening, 5 till 8, and Thursday evening, 5 till 8, and Friday and Saturday from 10 until 5.
So that explains why I drive by during the day sometimes, and they're not even open on Monday and Wednesday at all.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
We're heating the building for nothing?
Through you, Madam Mayor. As I explained earlier, we are open with at least 1 location every day except Sunday. We have tried to determine when the hours are that people are interested in using that particular branch, and the same with our Wellandport, and it's definitely Saturdays, and it's definitely evenings. So we've done our best to standardize the hours. When I was here in 21 and 22, we did standardize the hours across the 3 locations so that it was much easier for people to remember when we're open. We had a huge variety of, one branch would be open 1 until 4, and another one would be open 6 till 8, and no one knew. That was one of the complaints. No one knew when we were open. So we've standardized that, and people who use the library know when the library's open. It's posted on our Facebook page and also on our website and in our paper newsletter.
Madam Mayor, I'm the surviving alderman back then who pushed to get the new library in Casterville, because it used to be an old house on John Street. And I'm just shocked for what I hear today that I pushed so hard to get a new building that's vacant most of the time. Like, if it's Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and it's basically not open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the day at all, period. Like, that's an awful expensive building to put in that I thought was going to be utilized an awful lot more than that in order to justify its existence. And it seems like it's a very, very part-time, beautiful building sitting out in a rural area that's not being utilized.
Thank you for that comment, Councillor. I will just say that over the years, the library, based on children who are there, they grow up, they move away, the families that come in differ from. I know that years ago when that library was first built, they had a huge number of young children, many of whom were in my kindergarten of the day, and they ran a lot of regular daytime programs. But those kids have grown up and moved away. Some of them still live in the area, and they're parents themselves. But the dynamics of the area have changed a little bit in terms of that. So I think the library has tried to adjust to the needs of the particular area at the given time. But thank you for your comments. Anything else? Okay, Councillor Chichon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Weir, for that presentation. I might be wrong, but I'm looking, and I have the library service projects, which total $186,000, and I was trying hard to find the library budget for operations while you were doing your proposed presentation. Is the library's operating budget not included in our package?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe it's page 88 and 89.
I don't have those.
Try the other package, it might be there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, they're numbered, but there are two separate areas.
88 and 89 is recreation and culture libraries. Okay, fine. Sorry, we just got this as we sang "Oh Canada," and while I was hoping for Canada to survive, I haven't had a chance to look at the entire book. Okay, thank you for that, and I will review it. My next question comes with regard to this preparation for growth, and I am troubled by the fact that I hear that everywhere, and sitting looking for the preparation for growth. Perhaps I've just been too close to it, because growth will happen when it happens, and I think we are 3 to 10 years away from the accelerated projected growth. And I guess my question would be, are we and the library, we chastise the school system for building schools and having a planning for their schools that's different than ours. And that sometimes the alignment doesn't work, and we have either too big a school or too small a school. With the library, is the township and the library using the same forecast for when growth will happen? And I'm not sure who could answer that. Mr. CAO. Give it a stab. I'm not looking for perfection on this one. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. So within this budget, there's funding for a financial plan for the municipality that's going to be looking at exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have, at this point, that forecasted on when the growth is going to occur, what revenue we're expected to see. That's going to be coming. So that's work that's going to be done this year, but your time frame, I think, when we were to, if we were to cast that out, 3 to 10 years, that's a 7-year span, but if we were to get, for example, funding for infrastructure, that would still have to go through a design stage, procurement stage, before anything can get built. So I would say roughly that timeline is realistic when we start seeing growth.
Thank you, and I just want to make sure, because this unbridled growth that's coming, I think we need to give strategic plans a chance to settle in, to look at what is happening, to negotiate futures with the developers on how they want to proceed. You see, 1,300 or 1,400 houses ready to be built, and the economy has not supported that. So we're not building them. And while there may be things that help us to unblock that in the near future, it would mean that we don't necessarily have the support of the developers' bravery to enter into the market unless other things change. So I just want to make sure we're using the same time frame, because if you're saying it's going to happen, I think the steps we need to see are, what are you thinking and how are you casting your net as to how and what will happen? Because this is a very tough year, as will be next year. And I want to make sure that we, here at the town, in the town's budget, as well as in the library's budget, are not going down to Roma or AMO and asking for things when they look at our growth potential and say, what have you got in the ground? They thank us, and then we may not be top on their list to get the monies we need for the things, especially the library, which the mayor, actually, and I've been part of the team that's advocated for those funds. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm not sure how we resolve that, but I would hope that our senior people would be working on that as we work our way through this budget, collectively, through both organizations. Okay. Our transfers to reserves, and I guess this would be something directed to our finance people, it was referenced in the presentation that the transfers to reserves put a terrible onus on the capital, on the budget for the library. It's my understanding that our transfers to reserve we transfer to reserve what we expect to be spending in the next couple of years. So if we want it to be there to be spent year 1, 2, or 3, the reserve is really today's deposit to get to a time when the money expects to be spent for capital. Through you, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor, you're Mayor now.
Thank you.
Perhaps to our CFO, is that correct? So I'm reacting to the point that our transfers to reserves put the library at an increased cost annually.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Chichuk. So specifically for the library,
Yes.
the transfers to the reserves are required in order to fund the library's capital and special project budget for the next 10 years. So those will increase in order to support the requirements of the plan as needed.
So thank you. Further to that, Madam Mayor, through you to our CFO. So really, it's not a burden. If you put another dollar in the capital budget for any department in this organization, any department, it requires funding because we have to fund it. So when you see the $186,000 in capital and special projects that is being suggested that we spend this year, that would mean we either have it in a reserve already or we are preparing for that spending as well as the next few years. Is that correct?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Chichuk, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So unfortunately, where I sit, it's for any of our departments that come forward. If you want to spend it, we have to put it aside. So it's not that we're putting a burden. The transfer to reserves are not putting a burden on anyone specifically. They're just simply funding what it is you say you want to spend. So I understand the spend, but I thought there was something else that you might be referring to. So at this point, Madam Chair, Mayor, if there's something Ms. Weir wants to say about the reserve transfer, I'd be happy to hear.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Chichuk. It's simply an item that when you look through our budget has a particular percentage and something that I thought that you might be just interested in knowing that it affects our bottom line with our operating. I certainly know where that money goes. I know the importance of that money, and I know how we hope that money will be spent over the next 10 years.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really just want to make sure. You say you want to spend it. At this point in time, we're saying, okay, if you want to spend it, we have to find it to put it into reserves. Mm-hmm. So just wanted to make sure that that was what you meant as well. I do also cotton on to what Councillor Riley said earlier, and that is that if all the growth is going to happen in the urban area, what kind of expectations do we have for the two branches, in the one in Wellandport and the one in Caister? So I'd like a little more information as we move through the budget process to completely understand this. I'm not saying no to any of it. I want to carefully understand, because I can remember when the library budget was a lot smaller, but we've enhanced, and it does a lot more than just help with the literacy of our kids. the phonetics, et cetera, that we used to depend on librarians now is blessed with internet literacy, as well as many other types of literacy that seem to come from the library. So I'm not dispelling the idea of looking at this in concert with everything else, but it is not without notice that the library's budget continues to increase. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further? Councillor Broderick, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor, through you. And I guess just a general comment. I am the council rep for the library board, so I had the privilege to be sitting and participating in the budget formation that is provided before you tonight. I think I was very pleased to see that the board took a lot of effort and responsibility around that of the living wage of those low-income earners, and was, very conscious of that wanting to be a big part of the ask. And when you read through the numbers and you see the budget, you'll see that because they have been so underpaid for so long, that has created this budget this year that has a lot of catching up. And I think that, kudos to the remainder of the board that they were committed to bringing that forward to you. And, knowing that this is a difficult year, we certainly had a lot of discussions around that. I cautioned them a few times around what our growth projections were going to be and the limited amount of dollars that we were going to have to work with throughout the whole budget process. So they were very aware of that, and but still felt it to be very important to bring forward that part. And I just really wanted to capture that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call. Anything further? Okay. So for now, I thank you for your presentation, Cindy, and I think you've had some questions. You've had perhaps some things to take back to the board to think about. This is just an introduction tonight to budget. It will be certainly picked apart a lot further later on into February when we come forward, but thank you very much for this first look at it and for the time that you've taken. Thank you, please, to your board for the work that they've done on this. We appreciate it coming forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Good evening.
Okay, so as we move forward, Regional Councillor Witteveen is on vacation, and so we do not have Regional Council remarks this evening, so that takes us to the confirmation of minutes. 9.1 are council minutes from December 16th, and Councillor Riley, you have the resolution, please.
I do, Madam Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes relating to the December 16, 2024 council meeting and the recommendations contained therein be accepted. And two, that the confidential minutes related to the closed session portion of the December 16, 2024 council meeting be accepted, and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with exemptions provided in Section 239 of the Municipal Act.
Thank you. So someone to second those minutes, please. Councillor Maychuk, thank you. Are there any questions about the open portion section of those minutes? Okay, so Mr. Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on those. And first test this evening of the technology, and it should be up. Okay, did it come over there? Okay. Okay, and that resolution carries. Thank you. 9.2 are the minutes from the all committees meeting, including the public meetings from January 13th, 2025. And Councillor Broderick, you have that resolution, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself that the minutes relating to the January 13th, 2025 all committees, including public meetings meeting, and the recommendations contained therein be accepted, and that the confidential minutes relating to the closed session portion of the January 13th, 2025 council meeting be accepted, and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with exemptions provided in Section 239 of the Municipal Act.
Thank you. Councillor Trombetta, can I ask you to second those, please? Thank you. Are there any questions about the open session of those minutes? Okay, seeing none, so we're ready again, Mr. Clerk.
I'm good.
Did everybody get that vote? Good. Yeah, good. So far, so good. That also carries. 9.3 is the public meeting under the Planning Act portion from January 13th, and Councillor Chichok, you have that.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Moved by myself that the minutes relating to the January 13th, 2025 public meeting and the recommendations contained therein be accepted.
Thank you. And someone to second that, please. Councillor Riley, thank you. Okay, any questions about these minutes? Okay, seeing none, we will go for the third. And that also carries. Number 10 is communications, and there's a communication from Martina Joel of the West Lincoln Age Friendly Advisory Committee. Councillor Trombetta, you have that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Moved by myself that the notice of the resignation received on January 13th, 2025 from Martina Joel, Age Friendly Committee, be received, and that a bylaw 2023-03, being a bylaw for various appointments to boards, committees, and municipal positions, be amended to remove Martina Joel from Schedule A.
Thank you. And a seconder for that, please. Councillor Riley, thank you. And that vote should be up too. Okay, and that also carries. Okay, so that takes us to my remarks for this evening, and since our first look at the 2025 budget forms an important part of tonight's meeting, I've restricted my comments for this month to two topics that I think are important. The first is in regards to our participation at the Roma Conference. Apart from regular local and Niagara Regional regular January meetings, a great deal of time since the new year began has been taken up with preparations for the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, or Roma 2025 conference. This conference, which took place in Toronto from January 19th to 21st this year, regularly provides excellent learning opportunities for members of council on topics related to smaller municipalities in Ontario from across the province in order to share concerns and exchange ideas for potential solutions to common problems. The writing of materials to support applications to delegate to the various ministries of the province must be prepared and submitted well in advance, with no promise of actually being given a time slot. We consider West Lincoln as being very fortunate indeed to have been able to speak directly with the Minister of Infrastructure, the Honourable Kinga Surma, regarding our own specific needs for water, wastewater infrastructure. Normally, delegations take place on Sunday afternoon, all day Monday, and Tuesday morning of the conference. Unfortunately, Councillor Riley had to leave the conference on Monday evening. However, C.A. McBride, Councillor Chichok, and I were able to wait until after the conference had officially ended at noon on Tuesday for this wonderful opportunity. We had an excellent meeting with the minister and her staff, after which we felt that we finally have been acknowledged as being a small rural municipality in spite of being situated in Niagara Region rather than in the north of Ontario. That identification as small and rural positions us to be much more successful in future funding or grant opportunities. The second topic that I want to address tonight is an update on the new hospital build. Hamilton Health Sciences, throughout the ongoing building of the new West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, continues to hold regular meetings of the Hospital Community Council Board to ensure that our catchment area communities continue to receive status updates and also provide input into the various stages of the new hospital build. At these meetings, regular ongoing information regarding the status of the current hospital and reports and/or plans for the future building are provided by HHS, Hamilton Health Science executives, existing West Lincoln Memorial Hospital staff, the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation, the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Auxiliary, the Save and Rebuild Committee, and others. I'm pleased to still be part of that board, and I'm happy to report that substantial completion is supposed to take place in May of this year. It will, however, take several months to do things such as clean the building appropriately for a hospital setting, appropriately move in new equipment, train staff on that new equipment, transfer existing equipment in an appropriate manner that's still usable in the new hospital, and then eventually transfer existing patients in a safe and sensitive manner. The logistics of doing all of the necessary things to begin to operate a new hospital facility while maintaining the old until the last minute are extraordinary. Specialized staff have been working on these plans for a long time now and will need to continually pivot as the various circumstances with the move unfold. The proposed date for the opening of the new hospital is late summer, early fall of 2025. That's the first time, by the way, that it's been changed from late summer to late summer, early fall. I'm hoping that still means September into early October, but we don't know that. After that point, the old hospital will still need to come down in an appropriate manner to provide for future parking and any final landscaping. Until that work is complete, which could apparently take up to a year, the parking issue at the new hospital will continue to be the major issue that it currently is. We've waited for well over 20 years for this new hospital, so I think that the benefits of this wonderful new hospital will far outweigh any aggravation that the short-term lack of parking may cause. Let's remember that in the fall when everybody's complaining about parking. There's a video on the hospital build currently circulating on social media. Another updated version is to be out sometime soon. I encourage all to keep an eye out for any such videos. They make one excited at the prospect of finally having a new hospital to meet our health needs, as well as for the overall general future of hospital health care in our community. And that ends my remarks for this evening. Okay. Which takes us to reports of other committees, and there is no report from our Growth and Sustainability Committee, but what we've all been waiting for, 12.2, Corporate Services Committee, Director of Corporate Services and Chief Financial Officer, Caitlin Repos. Our look at the 2025 budget. So I think we'll let Caitlin do her PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll do the resolution to put it on the floor for further discussion. So we'll just watch and listen to what Caitlin has to say. First of all, Councillor Rayner, what were you saying?
Yes. Madam Mayor, this is an information report.
It is.
So we're going to beat the living you-know-what out of it next month. So why don't we just listen to it tonight? Everybody wanted the long version, which I tried to help you guys not to have that. So you're going to have the massive long version, take it home, digest it, and then come out to the battlefield next month.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying,
We don't need to
actually.
go start it tonight, really. It's
No.
information.
No,
Take
no,
it
no.
home, suck it up, and bring it back next month.
Which I think what I said. I said we're going to have the PowerPoint presentation, and then we will put the resolution on the floor, and the resolution says receive it for information.
And that's it.
That's
Hopefully, we are
what we
just
said.
call it a
But there still will be the opportunity to ask some particular questions to the report, but
That's opening the can of worms, Madam Mayor.
Well, we're not going to open the can of worms. We're listening if there are broad questions or if there are things that we want to comment on specifically, but we are not nitpicking the report tonight. We are listening to the report. This is for information. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor, and members of council. This evening, council is presented with the draft 2025 budget for the township as an item of information. The annual operating budget outlines the plan for the purchase and financing of the township's operations. After all the revenues are accounted for, including user fees, the tax levy is used to balance the budget. It reports the township's planned revenue and the cost of public services for 2025. The budget preparations for the 2025 year were a challenge as administration faced managing rising costs, a relatively small assessment growth, and tackling an infrastructure funding gap, while still being mindful on the impact to the tax levy. I would like to thank all of senior leadership for the work they spent in contributing to this budget, along with Donna DeFilippis for all of her support. The goal of administration is to have the 2025 budget approved by the end of February. So this presentation will outline to council some important background information. Then we'll go into some key aspects of the 2025 operating budget and the capital budget. We will look at the impact to the tax levy, and we will also look ahead to the 10-year capital plans and the impact on our reserves. Okay, so in preparing this budget, Administration ensured that the township's reserve policy was being followed and that reserve contributions were sufficient to address the requirements of the 10-year capital plan. Administration also took into consideration not only 2025, but the 9 years following that in determining those reserve contribution requirements. Ontario legislation states that municipalities must have a balanced budget, which means that all expenditures must have a revenue funding source. Under that legislation, municipalities cannot finance operations with debt, and we are not permitted to run a budget deficit. There was also concerted effort to keep operating lines below levels of inflation wherever possible. The preparation of the 2025 budget was aligned to the township's corporate strategic plan themes. The corporate strategic plan is the underlying document that guides the investments that are being made within this budget. And this slide outlines the 4 main themes outlined in the plan as a reminder to council. So, as mentioned, this evening we're going to be discussing the proposed 2025 operating capital budgets. These 2 budgets, while they are distinct, they are very much linked and work together as the slide demonstrates, and I will explain. It is important to remember that we must produce a balanced budget, so that means every expenditure we must have a way to pay for it. So the operating budget covers the township's day-to-day costs of delivering services. These include salaries and benefits for staff, repairs and maintenance costs to maintain our assets, and facility utilities as examples. In addition, the operating budget provides funding for capital and special projects in the form of reserve contributions and debt repayment, and these are treated as expenditures of the operating budget. And in order to pay for those expenses, the operating budget must be funded by a mixture of revenue streams, such as property taxes, grants, user fees, and other revenue. The capital budget outlines the township's plans for long-term investments in tangible capital assets, which provide benefits beyond 1 year, such as the building of a new facility or the purchase of a new fire truck. The township's capital budget also includes special projects, which are significant operating initiatives that are generally one-time in nature, such as software implementation or a master plan. And in order to pay for these expenditures, the capital budget is funded by grants and user fees such as development charges. However, the most significant revenue source of the capital budget are generally reserve transfers and debt, both of which are funded by the operating levy. However, when it's a growth-related project, the debt for that could also be funded through development charges. So I hope this helps to demonstrate how reserves are an essential part of an important tool for our township and ensuring financial sustainability, both in the short term and the long term. Setting money aside for future capital projects now reduces the need for long-term borrowing in the future or imposing sudden tax increases on current or future taxpayers. There are certain service areas that are self-funded, which means that there's no tax levy support going towards these service areas. They must fund themselves, which means that the expenditures that are incurred in those areas must be covered by their own source revenues, and those include building, water, and wastewater. And any surplus or deficits within those areas is offset to their own specific reserves. An administration performs an allocation of program support and overhead costs, which transfers levy-funded costs to those rate-funded areas to reflect the cost of providing goods and services to those rate-funded areas. So this chart below provides the estimated distribution of the tax bill that our property owners receive. So of the total tax bill for 2025, it is estimated that West Lincoln will retain 33% of the bill, And this has not significantly changed over the years, and it does not include the urban service area levy. And the remaining 68% of the bill goes towards the Niagara region and the province for education. So the region is estimated to take in 56% of our tax bill, with the province for education receiving approximately 11%. So looking back at 2024, this slide here breaks down where the 2024 tax bill received levy funding by service area, and this is presented for an average homeowner, and this also is included in the final tax bill insert that is goes out with every tax bill, typically in June. So the blue area within the chart represents the services provided by the Niagara region. The green represents the township, and the red portion at the bottom presents the education. You can see that police services and education receive the largest portions of the tax bill. So this slide here just provides some 2024 data using an assessment base of $100,000. It shows how the property taxes for $100,000 of assessment differs amongst the different Niagara area municipalities. As you can see, West Lincoln is the third lowest of the 12 lower tier municipalities in Niagara. And it is below the average, which is around $616 for every $100,000 in a residential home's values. I'd just like to point out that just when reviewing this information, it's important to take into account that an average value of a home, as assessed by MPAC, can differ between municipalities. So the closest municipalities that would have similar property values to West Lincoln would be Grimsby, Lincoln, Niagara-the-Lake, and Pelham, and they serve as better comparators. So, as mentioned earlier, the operating budget is the plan for the day-to-day operations at the township, which include the salaries, materials, and supplies as some key examples. So this chart here shows you how funds are spent and incurred based on the type of expense. So it includes all township expenditures, including those that are in rate-supported areas, such as building, water, and wastewater. And as you can see by this slide, the largest percentage of expenditures goes towards wages and benefits at 43%. And this chart here shows you the operating expenditures organized by each department service area. The largest allocation of the operating budget goes towards transportation services at a little over $4 million. The total operating budget is supported largely by property taxes and user fees, which this slide shows you here. It also, please keep in mind that this chart here includes user fees for our rate-supported areas, such as building, water, and wastewater. So it just shows you how the entire township budget is being funded. However, on this slide, the rate-supported expenditures and those funding sources have been removed, and now you just see the balance of the township operations and how those are funded. And as you can see, the substantial reliance is on property taxes of 69% as a funding source. Okay, so now we are going to delve into the major pressures that are impacting the 2025 budget. And then I'm going to follow this with how administration has planned to mitigate these pressures. The pressures are being organized into different categories, and the first we will talk about is investment in infrastructure. So this slide represents the increase needed to reserve transfers in the 2025 budget compared to 2024. So 487,330, or 5.02% of the levy increase, is attributable to increased transfers to levy-funded reserves over 2024. So these increases are critical in order to ensure sufficient funding will be available to complete projects in our 10-year plan. That means that transfers to capital-related reserves will increase from about 1.5 million to 1.98 million in 2025. And it's important to note that the township's 10-year capital plan increased about 56 million over what was seen in the 2024 10-year plan. And the increase of that will require an additional $10 million in reserve funding over the 10 years in order to meet those plan funding needs. Another consideration regarding the importance of this increase. Per the township's 2024 asset management plan that was presented to council in the fall of 2024, the township has an infrastructure funding gap of about $10 million a year. This means that there's a shortfall between financial resources available currently and the amount needed to build and maintain and upgrade infrastructure to meet demands. And the recommended time frame for eliminating this deficit is between 15 and 20 years. And in order to eliminate this deficit, the current recommendation is that the average annual tax levy would need to increase by about 4.2% each year, which translates to increase in reserve transfers. Another recommendation of the asset management plan was that there would be consideration of the plan as part of the annual budgeting process to ensure that sufficient capital funds are available. Administration is continuously working towards the integration of the asset management plan into the budget, such as reviews of asset condition information and asset useful lives to ensure alignment between these two important documents. Okay. The next pressure relates to investment in staff. So first is the cost of living adjustment. So included in the 2025 budget is a cost of living adjustment of $231,710, which reflects an increase in the cost of living adjustment to staff of 2.9%, in line with the negotiated rate per the collective agreement. For the two largest employee groups of the township, the amount of these adjustments are as follows. So for our non-union full-time staff and our permanent part-time staff, the increase is $153,800. And for our unionized staff, the increase is $77,900. The numbers provided also include the corresponding impact of any mandatory and group benefit costs that the township pays, which are largely based on a percentage of wages. The next area is related to the non-union grid implementation. So in 2020, Council approved a project to conduct a pay equity, market equity, non-union compensation review. The 2022 budget included the first step of implementation of that approved non-union salary grid, where the funding strategy was that there would be transfers from the contingency reserve and the tax levy, with the reliance on reserve transfers decreasing and reliance on the tax levy portion increasing over a 7-year period. So 2025 marks the 4th year of implementation, and we'll see positions move to the next step on the 6-step grid. And the step 6 represents job rate, or what the target rate of the position is based on the 2021 study. So the increase to the tax levy in this 4th year of implementation is $166,390, or a 1.71% increase to the tax levy. And the regular cost of living adjustment is not part of this calculation. This slide here just summarizing the remaining years within the implementation plan, which shows the estimated transfer from the reserves and the impact to the tax levy for each of the years up until 2028. And in 2028, at that point, all costs will be on the tax levy. The chart also indicates the estimated tax levy increases remaining from 2025 to 2028 in order to bring the this implementation plan that is still remaining requires significant transfers from the contingency reserve of $420,000 over the remaining years. Okay. So regarding some items related to staffing level enhancements. So there are 2 new FTEs, a supervisor of accounting and director of community and protective services, that received approval for inclusion in the 2025 budget, with further details of those FTE needs outlined through previous staff reports provided to council. The total impact of those 2 new FTEs is $327,000. The next item is regarding the addition of a new position in the planning department that occurred in 2023. Although it occurred in that year, it still has an impact on the 2025 budget, as the funding source that was originally planned for that role is no longer available, as the landowners group is not providing the funding towards that position. So the impact of that loss in funding was $121,000, and it was spread over 2 budget years, in 2024 and 2025. So in 2024, council will remember that $61,200 that was the net levy impact, as there was a transfer from the planning reserve to help offset that. However, the remaining $60,000 will now be funded by the levy in the 2025 year and not by the planning reserve. So the full impact of this position is now included in the 2025 levy. The Parks, Facilities, and Recreation Department's part-time wages budget has increased by $42,600. $29,100 of this increase relates to an increase in additional parks part-time staff hours, and $13,500 of this increase relates to an increase in recreation program hours. And these staffing cost increases are offset by increases in recreation department user fee revenues, which I will outline shortly. In the 2024 budget, administration temporarily removed a permanent 0.5 FTE non-union position from the base budget, which was the part-time administrative assistant to the clerk's department. This position had been vacant since April of 2022. So the removal of this position was to temporarily mitigate the impact on the levy. However, through the 2025 budget deliberations and review of work plans, it was determined that there is a need to reinstate this position. Therefore, the 2025 budget is reinstating this 0.5 FTE role at an impact of $35,600. And the last item regarding investment in staff was covered off by our previous library board presentation. Okay. Another pressure that the township saw this year was regarding inflation. So the cost of goods and services have increased as a result of inflation. However, administration worked hard to keep as many expenditures lines below levels of inflation as possible. And in some cases, there were no budget lines in some cases, there were no increases made. So the total increase in the 2025 budget related to inflation was $95,200. One area that we did see increase greater than inflation was that in software costs, which is attributable to a high volume of software providers increasing their fees beyond 5%. The 2025 budget also reflects increased costs for network security and anti-spam protection, which will help mitigate the risk of cybersecurity issues. Okay, and the last pressure is regarding service level enhancements. This is regarding a change in service regarding our Emergency Operations Center services, where administration is proposing that these types of services are procured through a shared service agreement to share Niagara West EOC staff with Grimsby and Lincoln, and this has a 2025 impact of $25,000. This will improve West Lincoln EOC staff ability to respond in an emergency situation. Okay, and now so those pressure items above that I just outlined, they total $1,554,700 and are increasing the tax levy. However, there are some significant mitigating items that will help to reduce the impact of this increase, which I will now outline. So in 2025, we are seeing an increase to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant. This is the province's general operating assistance grant to rural and northern municipalities. It is used in our operating budget to support all departments that are not self-funded. The province announced in 2024 that we are seeing an increase to the OMPF funding envelope, which has resulted in the township receiving an increase of $186,700 over 2024, which results in a total funding from the OMPF grant of $1,232,900. There's been an increase to property tax penalty and revenue. This is because administration reviewed the average, because of that review against actual and based on past history, the budgeted revenue for this area was increased by $40,000. Another area that saw an increase in revenues was regarding planning department, which is approximately $23,000 increase in net revenue over 2024. The budget reflects an increase to the dividend revenue received from Peninsula West Power Inc. So the township has a 24% interest in the Peninsula West Power Inc. And in the past, administration has not budgeted for this dividend revenue. Historically, as it has not been certain. However, over the past 10 years, excluding 2020, the lowest dividend amount received was $57,000, and the average dividend received has been $81,000. Therefore, the budget revenue for this area has been increased by $40,000 to reflect a conservative dividend revenue anticipated from this area. There's an increase in the recreation program and facility user fees of $66,000 over 2024, which is largely a result of a 5% increase to the recreation user fees that were approved by council at the December council meeting, and also administration reviewing actual revenue trends and updating the budget accordingly. So recreation programs has been increased by $45,000, while recreation facility revenue has increased around $20,000. Another area of mitigation is regarding the increase in development charge funding related to the debentures for the Fire Station 2 debenture and the Recreation Center debenture. Just for some background, so development charges can be used to fund portions of debentures that relate to growth. DCs can be used to offset the debenture repayment each year over the life of the debenture. So with the completion of the township's 2024 DC background study and bylaw in October 2024, calculations were reviewed and updates were made to the amount of DC funding available to offset the cost of the debenture repayment. So in the 2024 budget, $86,000 of DCs were used to offset the rec center debenture costs. However, in 2025, $349,000 of DCs are now being used based on guidance within our background study. So this results in an increase of $263,000 in available DC funding, which means less of an impact to the tax levy by that amount. For the Fire Station 2 debenture, the 2024 budget did not reflect any debenture-related DC funding, as the previous background study did not include this debenture. However, in 2025, $76,000 of DC funding has been reflected in the budget based on the background study. And the final area of mitigation is regarding an increase in the budgeted donation from the wind turbine agreement, and this was done to reflect the actual donation amount received each year. So the total of these items is a decrease of $725,340. And with all these items together, it helps with both the pressures net of the mitigation. It helps to explain 99% of the $833,430 tax levy increase over 2024. Now we're going to review some additional budget items. Okay, so now we will review the rate-supported areas of water and wastewater. So these services do not receive any levy support, and the related systems are entirely funded by the users that use the system. So the township purchases water from the Niagara region, as well as water and wastewater treatment services. It's important to note that for 2025, the Niagara region approved a water budget increase of 7.06% over 2024, and a 2025 wastewater budget increase of 15.01% over 2024. The region charges make up the majority of the costs in the township's water and wastewater budgets. Township administration made concerted effort to keep the 2025 water and wastewater rate increases below the approved region increases where possible. So the Township 2025 budget includes a 5.85% increase to the water consumptive rate, a 6.09% increase to the wastewater consumptive rate, and a 6% increase to the fixed water and wastewater base rates. And all of these rates would come into effect July 1st, 2025, consistent with prior years. And as the rate change would only be effective as of that date, the impact would be on the September and December 2025 billings. And the rate increases that I just outlined are presented here on this slide. Administration will be seeking approval of these rates along with all utility user fees at the February budget meeting. And this slide here just presents the impact of the proposed water and wastewater rate increases and what that would look like on an average utility ratepayer that uses 45 cubic meters every quarter or 180 cubic meters every year. So the bill would increase by about 6% or under $20 each quarter. Okay, so now we're going to turn our attention towards the township's 2025 capital plan and the budget. So this budget includes projects related to asset rehabilitation and renewal, investments required for growth and new development, and service level enhancements. These investments will allow the townships to continue to provide the current level of service, remain compliant with legislative requirements, and in some cases enhance current service levels. So the 2025 budget proposes investments totaling $10,439,650, and it sees the largest investments in transportation services, where 65% of the budget is allocated, as presented here on this chart. And environmental services, which includes water, sewer, and stormwater, will see the second largest investment at 16% of the capital budget. This graph here provides a view of the 2025 capital budget based on asset type. So road infrastructure includes roads, bridges, sidewalks, things of that nature. The environmental infrastructure would include water, sewer, and stormwater assets. Land improvements relate to betterments that ready a land for its intended use. So examples of that would be sports fields, fencing, and playgrounds. Rolling stock includes vehicles and equipment. And finally, special projects includes things like software implementation, master plans, or operating studies. The 2025 capital budget relies on a variety of revenue sources, with the greatest percentage being township levy-funded reserves at 45%. The largest actually in this year is government transfers at 47%, or $4,873,000. The second largest being the reserves at 45%. And in this current presentation in front of council, we do not require any debentures to be issued. And just another area of note regarding the grants. So the township relies on 2 grants from the province and the federal governments that provide significant amount of funding towards the capital plan. So there's the OSIV grant, which stands for Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, and the CCBF grant, the Canada Community Building Fund. And on an annual basis, the OSIF provides funding of about $660,000, and the CCBF grant provides annual funding of $506,000. And in 2025, approximately $3.3 million of the government transfers seen here relates to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant that is being received for the St. Anne's reconstruction project. And I'll just remind council of the township's development charge bylaw and background study that were recently passed in October of 2024, which approved new DC fees. So the 10-year capital plan has been developed and updated to reflect that new DC bylaw and background study to ensure alignment for the projects and their funding sources. Okay, so the next few slides will outline the 2025 capital and special projects sorted by department. So these are the projects that administration is presenting to council and that we will be seeking approval on. We have further allocated the projects into 4 main categories as information for council. So there's a rehabilitation renewal category, compliance-related projects, growth-related projects, and service improvement projects. And Schedule D of the staff report includes further details on all of these 2025 projects. So the first department that we are looking at is corporate services. So the majority of the 2025 projects relate to technology advancements and improvements. The largest project in this area is the implementation of and migration over to Microsoft 365, which is due to end-of-life support for our existing email and computer office applications at a cost of $100,000. Further, the IT master plan project at $75,000 will provide the township with a multi-year IT strategy to prepare for our digital future. Another project is related to technology upgrades is to our council chambers screens at $30,000. Another project to note included in the 2025 plan for corporate services is the Growth Fiscal Impact Study, which will identify the financial benefits and implications of growth in order to position the township for future growth and help us make informed decisions. And this project is funded by DCs of 45%. The next department we will look at is fire services, which has a 2025 budget of $1,140,200. The largest item in here is the replacement of a fire truck at Station 1 for $1 million, which is scheduled for replacement as the current truck is 20 years old. Further, the Station 2 self-contained breathing apparatus, cylinder, compressor, and filling station is also included at a cost of $90,000 and is fully funded by DCs. The overall planned capital project spending in transportation services is $6,803,750. Included in this plan for 2025 is the resurfacing of Silverdale Road from 20 Mile Road to Highway 20 at a budget of $1.5 million. And the funding allocation for this is from the CCBF grant and Township reserves. The largest infrastructure project in 2025 relates to the St. Anne's Road reconstruction, which includes road, bridge, sidewalk, and stormwater components. So this project is funded 83% by a grant, with the remaining funding through the OSIP grant and Township reserves. 2 tandem trucks are also included in the budget due to scheduled replacement. The environmental budget includes investments in rehabilitation of the town line stormwater management pond for $265,000, the storm sewer portion of the St. Anne's Road construction of $700,000, and remedial work to reduce and mitigate inflow and infiltration within the sanitary sewer system of $200,000. A new project has been added to the 10-year plan for the Dufferin Street water and sewer replacements, with the design work in 2025 of $120,000 and the construction in 2026 of $1.45 million. Next, we will discuss parks and recreation projects. So the majority of the projects under this category represent ongoing annual asset improvement or replacement plans for equipment. This budget specifically includes investments in the Wellandport Park and shoreline enhancements, with the funding in order to complete the detailed design work for the open space parkland between the existing community center and the Welland River. Construction funding is allocated to the 2030 year. And administration is currently seeking grant funding opportunities to support this project. And this project is partially funded by development charges. The library service projects have been submitted by the library and approved by their board and were explained in further detail earlier this evening. And the last area we will discuss is our planning department projects, which total $110,000 in 2025. This includes an official plan update, which is partially funded by DCs, along with a budget to complete an affordable housing community improvement plan of $15,000. Finally, it includes a $10,000 budget to allocate towards tree planting initiatives on private lands through a partnership with the NPCA. Okay, so now we are going to review what the impact of the 2025 operating and capital budget looks like to an average homeowner on their property tax bill that they receive for the township. So this slide here will look at only the township portion of the tax bill, as this is the only portion of the tax bill that is in our jurisdiction and that we can control. So the 2025 proposed base budget requires an overall tax levy of $10,542,540, which represents a 7.58% levy increase after factoring in growth. When we factor in the hospital levy of $206,000, which represents a decrease of $19,600 from 2024, the total proposed levy, factoring in the hospital levy after assessment growth, represents a 7.21% increase over 2024. This translates to an estimated increase in the West Lincoln portion of the bill for an average residential home in the not in the urban service area of $128.68, or a monthly increase of $10.06. The urban service area levy, it's a special levy collected in the urban service area of Smithville and funds the cost of streetlights and sidewalks, including sidewalk snow removal within this designated area. The proposed 2025 urban service area levy is $199,440 and is made up of two components, streetlights and sidewalks. The streetlight component is $53,500 in 2025, which is a decrease over 2024. And the decrease is related to 2024 being the last year of the payback to the contingency reserve as a result of the internal borrowing that was approved in the past to fund the LED streetlight conversions. The contingency reserve has now been fully reimbursed from energy savings in this area, so this has resulted in a decrease in the streetlight component to the urban service area levy. Regarding the sidewalk component of the urban service area levy, a further review of this budget area was done in 2025, and it was determined that some costs related to the annual sidewalk spot repair program were not allocated appropriately, and this updated allocation has been made in the 2025 budget to more accurately reflect where the cost should be, which explains a slight increase in the sidewalk component of a total of $145,940. So on a combined basis for the urban service area levy, there is an overall increase proposed of $13,120 over the 2024 levy. And looking specifically at a home in the urban service area, when factoring in the base levy, hospital levy, and the urban service area, an average homeowner would expect to see a $124.91 increase, or a monthly increase of $10.41. So this slide shows council the estimated impact to the total tax bill based on an average residential home. So this factors in the region portion and the education portion of the tax bill. Just please keep in mind that the township levy is the only item that is in our control. And also please note that the regions portion of the tax bill was calculated with tax policy and taxation rates not yet approved, and those are subject to change. Therefore, as council can see, the blended increase of 6.94% represents the impact that an average residential homeowner would see on their total tax bill, with all three taxing authorities included. And we're going to end off the presentation looking at the township's proposed 10-year capital plan, which covers the years 2025 to 2034, along with projected reserve balances. So the 10-year capital plan includes expenditures of $168.8 million. This outlines administration's capital and special projects over the 2025 to 2034 years time horizon. And the details of those expenditures is found on Schedule E of the attached to the staff report. This is a significant increase over the 10-year capital plan that was presented last to council last year, that covered the years 2024 to 2033, as that was at a cost of $104.3 million. And this slide in front of you shows you where the 10-year expenditures are taking place based on the asset type. In terms of funding, the bulk of that 10-year capital plan will be funded through reserves and debentures at about 52%. So these two items are funded by property taxes or user fees in the case of water and wastewater capital projects. The other largest chunk of funding will come through development charges at about 38%. It's important to note, though, that while development charges will fund a large portion of the 10-year capital plan, the township will likely not have the funds up front available to pay for these projects and will instead need to rely on front-ending agreements or debentures in order to move forward with these projects in the absence of available development charge reserve funds. And the details of the 10-year capital plan funding requirements can be found in Schedule F. This chart in front of you indicates to Council the anticipating closing balances for all the capital-related reserves that are funded through the tax levy. So this forecast is based on the reserve contribution increase in the 2025 budget. So any adjustment to the 2025 reserve transfers will result in this forecast changing. If reserve contributions are reduced, this would either result in the delay, a scope change, or elimination of capital projects. So this chart indicates that the equipment reserve will be in a negative position in the years 2025 and 2026. The fire reserve will be in a negative balance in 2027, and the sidewalk reserve will be in a negative position from the years 2026 to 2031. However, overall, the township's tax-supported reserves should collectively stay in a positive balance as long as capital reserve contributions are approved each year. If the township ends up in an overall net negative reserve position, which is a risk, the negative reserve balances will limit the funds available for investment and will impact cash flows for the township, which means that we'll likely need to engage in temporary borrowing and incur borrowing costs. Staff and administration have worked on ensuring that transfers to the reserves for 2025 adequately balance the requirements of the 10-year plan, as well as impact to the levy. And this chart here indicates to Council the estimated reserve transfers needed over the next 10 years, as shown in the green bar. The increase in those contributions, that's the blue turquoise colored bar, and what the anticipated tax impact will be over 10 years, which is the blue line. So the average increase to the reserve transfers over the 10-year plan is $885,000 on an annual basis, and the average increase to the levy currently is projected at 6.97%. And that's in order to fund the 10-year capital plan that is in front of Council. It's important to note that continuous increases to the reserve transfers will be required. That concludes the presentation of the draft 2025 budget. While this budget is presented for information, at this point, administration is happy to answer any questions that Council has tonight or after this meeting, leading up to our next budget meeting on Tuesday, February the 18th. The goal of administration is to have the 2025 budget approved by Council by the end of February. Thank you.
Thank you for your very first, very thorough, well-laid-out presentation, Caitlin. I'm sure you're glad to have that first kick at the can done, but we do appreciate all the work that went into that. I'm going to just actually call for the resolution to be put on the floor, and then we can take some questions. So, Councillor Bradrick, you have that, please.
Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. Moved by myself that information report T-01-2025 titled 2025 Draft Operating and Capital Budget dated January 27, 2025 be received for information.
Thank you. And someone to second that, Councillor Riley. Thank you. Okay, so let's just questions first? Okay, we can do that. So I'm going to suggest that hopefully everybody made notes along the way, and that we keep the questions at a higher level, giving direction back to staff or asking staff to look into particular areas as opposed to nitpicking. I think we'll have our chance to really give it a good go later on in the month. But are there any members of council who have sort of some general overall questions or questions about specific areas of the budget that they would like to ask at this time? Okay, Councillor Braddock, we'll start. Okay, well, it doesn't matter who goes, everybody will have a turn, so you go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Through you to the director, a quick question about the surplus from 2024. My memory tells me that we had perhaps utilized it in some capacity in past budgets to lessen the tax burden. Is that something, I didn't see it anywhere when I looked through the package, and I didn't hear it tonight, so could you clarify that for us?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Broderick, thank you for your question. Administration is currently reviewing what the 2024 surplus is looking. Based on our very preliminary calculations, the surplus is looking to be around $1 million. We will be reviewing that in correlation with the 2025 budget to see if we are able to incorporate that in terms of transfers to reserves, which will help offset the increase to some of the reserve transfers we're proposing. So that is our current plan and what the current status of that is. And we hope to have more information to present back to council at the February budget meeting.
Thank you very much. And I should have started my question with a thank you to you and your department, as well as all the directors and the hard work gone into this great amount of work. And you should have led with that good news about that surplus. Thank you, Thank you, that's all.
Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and yes, I echo Councillor Broderick's comments there. So through you, Madam Mayor, to our CFO. So I have a few questions here. I think I'll start with when we were talking about the surplus. I kind of wanted to know if there's a possibility or opportunity that we could use some of that to remain status quo on the urban service tax, because that's something that's going up substantially compared to other years, and what might only seem like a few dollars to some is a lot to others. So I'm hoping that there's, you're talking about $30,000 or something like that. I'm hoping that there's somewhere in the surplus that we can use to offset that. So that's more of a general inquiry. If you want, I can kind of spit out a few questions now, and you can figure out which ones you can answer and which ones you can come back to me later. In terms of the current blended rate, should things be supported as is in a few weeks from now, what would that look like? Pardon me? I didn't see it. I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
All three or no? Three or no?
I'll show it.
Try it again. I clearly missed it, so I don't know what everyone's getting all hot and bothered
Hold on a
over.
minute.
I'd like to clarify.
Okay,
So
so
it
through
was mentioned, but we will have it clarified.
Yes.
Through Madam Mayor
Right,
to
well,
Councillor
make my notes.
Riley. So just regarding your first question of reviewing whether some of the surplus could be used to offset the impact of the urban service area impact. So we will review that item and present back to council at the February budget meeting. And your next question regarding the blended rate increase that's currently proposed, that is just shown on the screen.
6.93.
Yes, 6.94% for properties that are not in the urban service area, 6.93% for those within the urban service area.
Excellent. Perfect. I must have missed that while I was taking my notes.
Okay, so you have a further
appreciate
question,
that.
though, you said.
Yes.
So the floor is yours.
So thank you. And so I guess one of the things, this is our time where we can kind of help, like, we're not going to nitpick or get into the finer details of it, but this is the time where we kind of express our, the direction we'd like you guys to take. So I know, should it be supported by council here, I'd like to see that rate reduced to somewhere under 4%. So I'm just throwing that out there in the universe to see what you guys can deal with in the future. I don't know what would have to be changed. I know I'd feel a lot more comfortable seeing that somewhere around there, if it's even possible. But again, not looking necessarily to make a decision tonight. I think, and that's not blended by any means. I'm just speaking specifically to the local levy itself. I realize trying to do the blended would not be possible. But I think considering what's kind of lays before us and what we have to deal with, that's going to, make it a little bit easier to sell back to the community if we can kind of get it a little bit closer to home there. The 7.2 that was originally on my form here, I think is a little bit high. So that's all. I'll hold that for now, Madam Mayor. I'm sure you have another question or two later, but that's it.
Councillor Maychak.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just wanted to check, I know we're undergoing the master plan. Has any of that been taken into account when you've done your budget plan, which was also excellent?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Maychuk, can you please just clarify what master plan you're referring to?
Yeah, the recreation master plan.
Okay.
If any of those have been taken into account for the budget.
Okay, thank you. I'll just pass that along to our Director of Growth and Sustainability, who could further clarify on that, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Maychuk, we're not at a stage with the master plan project yet to know what their recommendations are. I think that'll come soon, and that will most likely be reflected in the next budget process, as well as there'll be some adjustments needed to the development charge bylaw as well to capture and any additional projects that are covered under that master plan. So we're not at that stage yet with that particular document.
Okay. You're fine? Okay. Councillor Trombetta, you want to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for the comments, and I guess thanks to senior staff for putting this forward so I can pick it apart and have some questions about it. I know senior staff, I say it every year, they put the eggs in the basket. It's for our job to take the eggs out. They give us the whole basket of eggs, and my job and council's job is kind of take some of them out, and I'd like to see quite a few out because I think the number is high, so I'm going to agree with my colleague across that mentioned I want to see it lower. I do have a question through you, Madam Mayor, can go to the CAO. He might not be able to answer this, but maybe Madam Mayor may be able to answer this. We have a loss of developer contribution to the planning department of $60,000. Have these developers been brought in to say why haven't they paid their fair share? Is there a contractual agreement to say, I guess, when we did hire that position, that it wasn't going to be all on the back of the taxpayers, that there was actually a contract in place for this position, or some sort of agreement that was written up through our legal, because I know our legal was usually spent immensely in the last administration. Why wasn't there no legal document of any sorts, or why haven't these landowner groups been held accountable to pay for this position that is now being put on the tax base?
Okay, so I'm not sure if our current CAO would be able to answer that, or whether even our director would, but we'll
So everybody wants to.
We'll give it a go. It's a fair question.
I see a lot of
We'll give
head
it a go.
shaking, but it's very hard to answer a question because this was the previous administration that agreed to these conditions. Well, I'm at a loss because it seems that year after year, we're getting held to hold the bag for this position. So I need some answers.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, and I can look to perhaps Mr. Borma and our CFO to backstop me as required. My understanding of that, it was a discussion, it was a verbal discussion that was being had with the development industry. The landowner group at one point had agreed to front and give us some funding for that position. I believe that as we went through some of the work around the challenges with the servicing that were going through the PCB area caused us to have to rejig and redo that servicing strategy for the urban expansion area. That created some frustrations and tensions within the relationship as nothing was papered. It was something that the developer group was able to walk away from. I think what we need to do looking at this going forward, I have spoken to staff already about this today, about getting a planning and engineering development fee review revisit done to look at what those rates are. I think that it does make sense for the development industry to be paying as growth pays for growth. So this is something that we're going to be circling back around to through our rates as opposed to a standalone agreement to fund a position. So it is being explored, but at the moment it is a hole in the budget. You are correct.
Well, thanks for that, Mr. CAO. It is kind of unfortunate that, I guess we're left holding the bag for a verbal agreement, which there was no contractual or written agreement. I think that's a big mistake. And again, not by your administration, by the previous administration. It's a pretty bad mistake that's now on the back of the taxpayers. So, again, I'm going to save my comments for next month, but there's a lot of these eggs in this basket that need to be removed for me to move forward with this budget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chichot.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know, and I want to thank our staff through you for the work that goes into any budget. I must say that the presentation was great, and it seems that everybody has given a lot of reasoning into what it is that they've done. So I appreciate the amount of knowledge that has been imparted by some of our former financial staff and has been given to the staff we have today. So I mean that, and over the coming weeks, I hope that we can work together to take some of the bumps out of what it is that we think we have. And I look at this budget, Madam Mayor, and I have I know we have two problems. One is the lack of new assessment, and we never expected the kind of reduction to our assessment growth that we have had over the past 2 years, and likely for another one, at least. And we also are troubled because the region has approved their budget, and that should not hamper us in making decisions about what it is that we, at this level of government, have to do and what our costs are. So it's a very hard nut to crack, and I don't think we can compromise our budget by the fact that the region went ahead of us and their numbers out there. So I'm troubled also by looking at our budget, and my question is, starting in April, I believe that we, the lower tier, are going to take over the costs of some of the planning organization or work that's going to be done as we grow. And it doesn't matter whether we're going to hire somebody or the region is going to do it for us. We are, in fact, at that point, responsible for that. So somewhere in this budget, there should be extra costs buried that we aren't looking at. I'm not looking to look at it. My point is this. I don't want to lose sight of that. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that whether the region's going to charge us and we are going to pay it, or we are going to hire people ultimately and we are going to incur it, much like Councillor Trombetta's point about people, we're going to end up with a new cost, which is the region is no longer to be involved in planning within their budget. So am I correct in understanding that somewhere in this budget there is costs associated with, as we grow, any reviews or any participation that we need that we don't have right now, that the region is keeping in their realm, and we have signed a memorandum of understanding that they will supply that for us for the coming year. Is it year? How?
18 months.
18 months. Is that correct? Or is it in here? Because I'm very impressed. I think we are going to have to eat that, much like your 60,000, which, we weren't growing, so the developers probably got a little antsy, and we'll probably be able to talk with them. But where exactly is that cost for the work that the region is going to undertake that I understand under the MOU is going to fall into our pot?
Okay,
I don't care who answers it.
I'm actually going to go either to our CAO or to our Director of Growth and
Oh, go ahead.
Sustainability, because we did address that a while back, and my understanding is from the regional perspective as well, that that's more of a flow-through, but I'm not certain.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct. This is a flow-through from the region, so development pays the region directly for these services. It doesn't go through West Lincoln.
So, for example, if there was a particular kind of study that was required, I would think, and maybe Garrett could weigh in, then it would be the region. If it was regional staff that was looking after it, they would directly bill that to the applicant who needed to have that study done. It would not be something that we were dealing with. Is that either one of you correct?
I think just a slight tweak on that. If it depends. if it's something to do with a development approval review, then that is what the region would do, and the developer would pay the region for that. If it was something different, like an employment study, that's not something the developers would pay through. You do see those costs reflected in your budget.
So overall, I think we need to be paying very close attention to that as the region eases out of supplying those services and we, in fact, take them over. I only want to make sure, because our development charges will have to be adjusted or eat into the area of development charges that the region's paying. And I'm saying that because that shift will ultimately happen.
Right.
So that's just one thing I couldn't find, and I was going to compliment our staff on the fact that the increase in planning wasn't nearly what I expected it to be.
Okay.
So
did you
I'll
want to
hold
weigh
that.
in on that at all, Director?
I'm fine with the answer I have.
You're fine? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Well, then I just
Leave it
didn't
at
know
that.
if they wanted to weigh in anything further. Okay, fair
No.
enough.
Okay.
If you're good. Okay.
Okay, so I do want to, page 181, there was a slide, and I want to be very careful on how we say that. It was the slide on which we said that our costs as compared to earnings in West Lincoln are, there you go, if you look at page 181, we're third on the list of earnings. I really want to be careful. We have young people moving into West Lincoln, and we have retired people moving into West Lincoln, going to bungalows, and they may be on a fixed income. I just don't want us to think that because we're third in earnings, that means we have the money to support the kind of expenses that we are putting in here. And while Brazis and Company, BMR, did the plan back in 2024, this slide disturbs me, because if you're a farmer and you live in Lincoln and you only decide to take $100,000 out of your farming income because you're going to put it into tractors and various other things, CRA says you made $100,000, but you might have had a profit of $500,000, but you bought a tractor and you put up a shed and you did a lot of other things. So this slide could be a little deceiving, and I'm just saying that a young family with $136,000 is currently going to community care for support with their food expenses. So it just bothers me that it makes it sound like our people can afford anything we throw up there. So if you really want to make me happy, this slide would go away in the future budget, but it's just, I just find it a little deceiving. So
Thank you.
I'm not saying we're poor. I'm not saying we're not well off in West Lincoln, but we also need to pay attention to what it really means. My next question, and I'm going to leave most of it for the actual budget, but I thought I'd just ask in case there was more work that has to be done. In one of the pages, I was struggling because some of the numbers that were being referred to in the presentation were a little different than on the written page, and I was hoping that we could possibly add a few more percentages so that I don't have to figure them out, but and I don't want to make a mistake in understanding it. So it comes down to the back pages where there were, I can show you later. So I'm wondering whether this plan suggests that when we were talking about the 15 and 20 years of consideration that will take, in our capital forecasting, will take 10 years to pay down. Have we taken into consideration some of the growth that should or would be delivered, and that should reduce the impact of our 10-year forecast of levy-supported reserve closings? Or is that projected based on, what is it projected on? That would be the proper question.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Chichuk. So the 10-year capital plan that is outlined in Schedule E to the report. So that outlines how the 10-year capital plan is being paid for, organized by all the different funding sources. So any of the growth-related projects will be funded appropriately through the DC reserves, which are represented through this schedule. When looking at the 10-year capital plan that was presented in 2024 versus what was presented in 2025, the increase in use of development charges had increased, I'll just put that number up here. by about $10 million, which a result of adding more growth-related projects to the plan, along with our 2024 DC background study being passed. So I hope that helps to answer at least part of your question.
Actually not. I think the focus of my question was that if we are using 10 years and we don't have an agreed upon number that we're using for growth, how can we do this plan, or what are you using for growth projections? Is it the one we used in the development charges, or how are we assigning this to be considered to be what will be required by the tax levy and what can be funded from growth or development charges? Maybe we can take it offline. It's looking at, I've lost my page now.
So, Councillor, are you looking at whether the projections are all based on where we currently sit as a population, or whether any population increases have been added as the years go on? Is that
Well, if that explains
you're
it a little
going?
bit better, but I'm looking at the forecast of levy-supported reserve closings.
right? But
So-
are you trying to find out from our director whether she has given some consideration to the fact that there will be more people
There will be some.
in 5 years or 6 years or 10
Correct.
years moving forward, or
And
whether this number is based on
We
the status quo?
We had a development charge study done, and we did have a growth forecast.
Right.
It may be out to lunch, but I'm just wondering whether we're still following the growth expected in our development charge study that was just done, or something else. That might be the clearest way I can say it.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Chichuk, so I'll try to answer your question. So as you mentioned, with our 2024 DC background study, that included growth projections out to I can't remember the exact year, 51, I believe. And with that background study, that was aligned to our 10-year capital plan. So essentially, the growth projections within that were factored into the funding of the 10-year plan for the projects that are in our 10-year capital plan, and also in the same time horizon for our DC background study. So there is a connection.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. That's great. That's all I wanted to make sure of, was that it aligned with something at the moment and will have to be changed as we move forward in the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rayner.
Fire chief, $1 million for a truck? We're going to Caster, so I'm wondering if we could downsize some of the options, like maybe not heated steering wheel, not heated seats, window handle instead of electric for the windows, entertainment center reduced to an 8-track player, and then standard transmission, just to kind of keep the cost down, but we still have the basic truck for the functions to which we need it for. How's that sound?
Would you like to answer that, Chief?
Sure, no problem. Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Rayner. That is a standard off the lot truck, today's market.
Through you, Madam Chair, I know sitting on the electrical board that when you require a truck for doing the work on the poles and everything else, those trucks are ordered 3 years in advance. What's the order on the fire truck? What's the timeline?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Rayner, it's about 18 months, 20 months.
Half the amount.
It's about 20 months.
So it's the basic unit.
Yes, it's pretty generic. Now, having said that, there is availabilities or options of going to the trade show in May and buying one at the show. Then there's some procurement policies that would have to be looked at. And
mean
that's
a
a discussion
demonstrator?
that we can have offline.
You mean a demonstrator at the show?
Correct.
How much savings does that usually, have you got an idea what they usually?
It would run between 125 and 150,000.
Through you to the CAO, is there any reason why we couldn't entertain that if it's a perfectly acceptable truck that it was used for demonstration purposes? absolutely what we could use.
Madam Mayor. Thank you. Through you, administration would be supportive of any measure that we could find to save dollars for the municipality, as so long as it aligns with the procurement policy as laid out by council. I think before we purchase anything with a trade show, we want to make sure that we're following procurement practices, and if there is a way, then we certainly explore it and have those conversations with the chief outside of budget.
Madam Mayor, so can we investigate that to see if that is an option? Because that's a very good point that Chief brought up.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Rayner, I will certainly sit down with the DC and myself and look at those options and maybe come back with council with an information.
For next month, for the budget. Because this is a budget item, so this would be the relevant time to find out.
But the trade show, you could do the preliminary work
No,
on the assumption, but
fits
the
the
trade
protocol
show isn't
procedure.
until later on in the spring. And
No,
so-
I know that, but if the chief said there is a discount if you buy the vehicle then, as long as we've got everything in place and we can do that, that's all I need to know for next month, so that it's not gonna be the million, it's gonna be something less than that, potentially at least 10%, if not more. Then it's certainly a help, because if $97,091 or something equals 1%, then we've just saved 1%. Let's do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from any members of council? Councilor O'Reilly, second time?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, back through you to the CFO. So I wanted to actually talk about the other thing I forgot to mention was the surveys, and so I think I see we have here 126 people who actually took part, and to those, if there any of them are watching or they're here in the gallery, thank you for making the effort there and having your voice heard. I guess my question is, for those of us who have taken the time to read it, you can see they're kind of a little bit all over the spectrum, and in terms of needs and wants. And we saw tonight that there's somewhere near $6 million that's being invested into a rural community, which if you look here, a lot of them were complaining that were related to that they felt that the rural community was being neglected and ignored, and that is not the case, which is great. I guess my question to you, Madam Mayor, is I'd like to improve this number. This number represents less than 0.5%, or maybe a nudge above. I think it's 0.007 or something like that. And so I'm wondering if we can put these out in the future, say the last utility bill of the year before, there could be hard copies at the community center, stuff that really, because not everybody's finding it on social media, and we don't have every resident's email, so you're not necessarily getting it to their emails. I think we need to do a better job in getting the public involved, and I think that might be one way to kind of preempt that in the year before. So if we can maybe aim for this, and leave it to you guys to decide, but hypothetically, if we were to make a decision, I'd love to see it out before the end of this year, whatever that last utility usually comes out, I think October-ish, if not sooner. If there's some way we can have something already in place, so that way it's going out at the same time, it's not costing anything extra, we can kind of be efficient with that. And so that was one of my inquiries, if that's something that could be explored, because I think, there's some valuable insight here. And there's, and like I said, it's all sides you're hearing of opinions, which are valuable, but I think we got to do a much better job than barely 1%.
The same problem we have with everything else, right? Getting
Yes.
information out, but I think that's a good idea to start sooner, so perhaps we can look into that.
Absolutely. So, and then I think the other question I was kind of on the track there, but I think I got distracted, was, okay, so you mentioned that the Penn West surplus was $40,000 more than the year before, but you also mentioned one of the lower surpluses we received was around $57,000, but that doesn't necessarily tell us what the surplus was last year, and I don't believe I saw it here. What was the actual total surplus that we received this year? Because if it's a $40,000 increase, and I can't remember, but I thought last year we were around somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000, maybe more. I'm just kind of curious what that picture looks like. So through you, Madam Mayor, to the CFO, sorry.
Thank you.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Riley. So regarding the mitigation in the 2025 budget related to the Penn West dividend received. So in the past, we have historically never included the dividend revenue in the budget. This is the first year that we are reflecting any kind of dividend income from this entity. And just to clarify too, it is just the dividend that we receive from Peninsula West Power. It's not reflective of their surplus.
Correct. Sorry, I might have misphrased
Yeah.
that.
And just for information of council, the dividend that the township received from Peninsula West Power in 2024 was $134,000.
Okay, thank you. And that's a substantial amount of, okay, Councillor, a substantial amount of dividend there, and it's great to see a return of that. I know we had a few years there where they, I think, they were hard times.
So if I could just interject to that, in 2020, they gave $0
Yes.
Because of the situation during 2020, obviously.
Yes.
So over time, the intent was to try to level it out, right, to make sure they brought it to a level, and then,
Yeah.
so I think we have now, and perhaps that's what administration is looking at in terms of finance, we finally have some consistency so that we have a better idea what to expect moving forward.
Yeah. And
Would you concur, Councillor Trombetta? I think that's,
Yes, Madam Mayor, it has been more consistent as past 2020 and now towards 2025.
and that was the goal. I
So
think
in 2020 as well, I know there was a lot of pressure from the OEB to basically not be pushing out dividends if you can and look for corners
Exactly.
to cut. I do know that we were, us and other areas were victim to that, but that was primarily a push from the OEB, not so much the energy company itself. But anyways, that's all my questions for now. I'll have plenty more for you in February, and I'll probably reach out to you beforehand in between, but thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sit on the board for PEI, and the reason the money is larger is because you're correct. There was none because of the COVID situation. But because the situations have changed, the board of directors went back and said we would like to get that money back to them. So what we've done is we've gone back to 2020, we've looked at what that money would have been, and we've increased it on top of the one that they would have got for 2024, and that's why that number is so high.
Okay.
There are 3 municipalities that get that on Penn West Power, and the largest is Lincoln. I believe it's 59%, and then it's West Lincoln, and then Pelham is the smallest one. So it's a percentage of that. The money comes from NPEI to Peninsula West Power. Peninsula West Power divides it up to the 3 municipalities and gives the check.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Chichok.
Mayor, I may lose sleep on this or have to find where I heard it. Can I just ask the question through you to the CFO? What was the surplus for 2024 that carried over into the budget? You said it, and I apologize. I was making notes. Probably with Councillor.
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Chichuk, very preliminary administration has been working on determining what the 2024 surplus is, but we are estimating around $1 million.
That's what I thought. Somebody repeated. Okay. And in 2023, it was not that high, was it? I think it was closer to 300,000.
I'll just have to grab that information. I don't have it right in front of me, but I can grab it for you.
Offline, and we'll share it. Thanks.
Okay. So it certainly was a lot less that we applied to our 2024 budget. I don't know what the numbers were offhand either, but it was not that. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one short question over to Caitlin. You said this year was the first time you were using the dividends in the budget. Where did they go prior? Because there was a substantial amount of money every year. Did they go into contingency reserves or something, or?
Through Madam Mayor to Councillor Rayner, yes, that is correct. The dividend income has not been reflected previously in the budget due to uncertainty concerns with the amount. But so in the past, when the dividend income was received, it would have gone into the overall township surplus, which would have been transferred as recommended by administration into reserve funds. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trombetta.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question through you to Director DePaula. The St. Anne's rehabilitation, is all of that, and I know through Caitlin's presentation said that it's funded, because I know I went to, I guess when we did get the funding award, I took a picture there, and News Now and fellow colleagues told me it looked like a boy band group at that picture that was taken.
That was actually me, Madam Mayor.
That was years ago.
It was not me that said
it was a
that.
boy band group picture, but it was actually a funding picture that we got in St. Anne's. It was years ago. But I'm just asking you through, Madam Mayor, to Director DePaula, is all this being funded by grants? Because I see there's sewers, there's sidewalks, and I know the CFO did mention it's grant funded, but I just want to double check if anything is not grant funded, because I saw the sewer portion and sidewalk portions.
Okay. Director DePaul?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Trebetta. The way the grant works is certain aspects of the project is eligible for funding and some areas are not. So for example, the sidewalk work, the road work, the bridge work, any utility relocations, and all the design work, all the soft costs, they are eligible under the grant. We just have to pay, I believe it's around 17%. The rest of the balance is covered by the funding program. There is some ineligible costs, and that would be the storm sewer. So when you're looking at the budgets, the costs related to building the storm sewer to build the road, unfortunately, that storm sewer cost is not eligible, and it's 100% funded by the town.
Now, just from my civil background, where, through you, Madam Mayor, to the director, where are we talking culverts and ditches? Where is there storm sewer in St. Anne's?
Well, St. Anne's between Regional 69 and 16 Road. It's a semi-urban cross-section, so because there's a sidewalk on one side, there is a kind of a makeshift storm sewer, a lot of culverts, buried culverts and stuff like that.
Okay,
there are some
culverts,
ditches, but the ultimate goal here is to urbanize that section of road with curb and gutter. So once you urbanize a road with curb and gutter, you require a storm sewer. So there will be a storm sewer between Regional 69, 20 Road and 16 Road. That's going to be an urban cross-section with sidewalk on one side. And then south of 16 Road, the Highway 20 will remain rural.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, thank you.
Last call. We finished then? Okay. So
Sorry, one last thing.
go ahead,
There's also a bridge rehabilitation as part of that project. So that bridge rehabilitation work is eligible costs. So the township has to pay 17% of the cost.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've had answers. The vote is in front of you. Remember, we're just receiving this for information tonight. You got everybody? Yeah, did it come up on your side?
I was going to say, finally, it's getting their side.
Nope, it's up for everybody, and so that carries. So thank you, everybody, for your questions, and thank you for your answers, members of senior staff. So Community and Protective Services Committee, there are no reports. That committee, by the way, will eventually stand up and will have its proper meeting as of March. I think that's what we're aiming for, Mr. CAO, right? So, Councillor Trombetta, that's a heads up to you then. March, that will be that committee, a new one. And then Operations Committee, there are no reports tonight, although we've had lots of discussion about that. There is nothing to be reconsidered. There is no motion to rescind anything, which takes us to other business and members of council. So, Councillor Riley, we'll start with you and what you have in mind, and then we'll go to other members of council because this is the opportunity for people to put their information in.
So I have a couple of things. Does it matter what order I start them in?
Let's do your
the
resolution first and do that. Deal
Sure.
with that.
And so because we're doing it this way, I just need to see clarity. Do I have to, I think last time when Councilor Rayner did it, he didn't need to get a seconder until after he kind of explained it. Are we still doing it the same way? Through you, Madam Mayor, to the clerk?
Through the mayor to Councilor Riley, you can speak generally of what you're seeking. However, when we're receiving feedback from other councilors where they're asking questions, it would be more proper to have the motion on the floor so you can kind of give a preamble to what you're discussing and then move what you are actually asking council to agree upon.
So introduce your topic.
Okay.
We'll put a resolution on the floor, okay?
Perfect. So, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Clerk there. So actually, some of this was in consultation with the clerk's department and in making sure that this was done correctly. And so one of the things I'd like to bring forward tonight is for staff, and there's certainly no urgency for it to be done during the next couple of months there. Ideally, the thought process is by the end of the year, if possible, to do a comprehensive review of the council code of conduct and the council staff relations policy. These particular documents have not been done for many years now. And there are, as we've kind of seen in the last little while in terms of what former council looked like to the new council, and learning that there's things that we need to beef up and correct within our own policies that have kind of just, times have changed. I know I have some further questions and comments I'd like to save for later, if whether it's at this time or when the thing comes back, should be supported. But I think as responsibility falls on us to make sure that these are up to date and these are handled correctly, that we have staff kind of go and investigate what our current policies stand at and if they are actually compliant with what we're dealing with today. So at this point, Madam Mayor, I guess
Yeah, we need somebody to second. So
yeah,
you
so
have a
I'll read it.
resolution.
If you want me to, are you going to read it?
Well, you can move it. You can read it.
Okay, so moved by myself that administration be directed to perform a comprehensive review of both the council code of conduct policy and the council staff relations policy. And I'm going to add an and, that staff report back to a council or committee meeting before the end of the year.
Okay, so we'll.
Sorry.
So we need someone to second that. Councillor Braderick, thank you. Okay, so I would gladly have added another piece that needs to be looked at as well, which is our procedural bylaw, but we'll leave this the way it is.
Okay.
I think policy is our domain, and so the fact that we want to have that looked at is not a bad thing at all. Open for discussion. Oh, go ahead. Mr. Clark.
Through the mayor to Councillor Riley and to the rest of council as well, just as this is directed towards administration and as the department that deals with a lot of policy. It's a point well taken. Administration recently has been looking into policy and the review of policy. Internally, we're calling it the policy on policy, providing administration and council sort of a guiding, overarching framework to understand which policy applies to council, which policy applies to administration, and when and where we can make those changes, as well as adding a retention trigger, much like how a lot of our records apply retention triggers. We notice, as Councillor Riley brought up as well, which is well pointed out, that some of these policies no longer serve us in the way in which they did 10, 15 years ago, and they haven't been revisited. Adding a retention trigger, say review in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever policy it is a useful tool for administration to use, just to make sure that best practices are followed, that all legislation requirements are met, irregardless of who is in the administration at that time. It would provide that trigger. This is a point well taken, and that administration has already taken a few steps to get to that point. Right now, we're focused on the delegation of authority bylaw. This is kind of a sister project in which it would naturally follow, and I think a report by the end of the calendar year is more than doable for administration.
Okay, appreciate that. And if I may continue, Madam Mayor, part of where this kind of comes from, as well as when I looked at what we went through last term and what we kind of thought we knew in terms of our code of conduct, considering what we have going on and certain things I've heard from members of the community, there's still confusion of where a councillor is a councillor or a mayor is a mayor, and where that separation aspect kicks in. So whether we're at a community event and we're there as a private citizen, we learn from former integrity commissioner that at no point can we just take our hat off and, hey, I'm going to be Bill Riley today. I'm not going to have to worry about that. We have an oath and a responsibility. And so one of the things I certainly hope is explored is a very clear idea of, and to take out even potential liability or confusion when people of the community are asking, is that person's really supposed to be there? If you're in a vendor situation, whether you're there paid or you're volunteer, but you're also a counselor, and things are going to happen. People find us in the community and they ask us questions, whether or not that's our intention or not. I'd like to also see that liability not applied to the municipality. So I'm hoping that part is explored. So that's I just wanted to give you a little bit of understanding kind of where I'm coming from with the code of conduct aspect. But during the rest of the research, I realized, hey, it's been several years, and as the clerk mentioned, it's good to have a renewable option there, so it's not left to the member of council to say, hey, another 5 years from now, should we do this?
It should be a
Correct.
time slot for sure.
Thank you.
And we've talked about that. So are there any other questions or comments about this? I'm hoping that some of these questions that give us some direction actually might come up tomorrow night.
Which would be great.
So, so I'm thinking, we have a special council meeting, we have, as long as the weather holds, we have our IC here, we have our new legal person here. I think we can ask those questions, and perhaps that will in fact give some direction to staff as well. So any further questions about this? Any comments about it? Are we ready to just? Okay.
Through the mayor to Councilor Riley, just so I make sure I've captured it correctly, the first part will remain the same. However, you've also added that administration return with a report before the end of the calendar year. I'll just need a seconder to approve of that motion to put on the floor to vote upon. So
Can that be just a friendly amendment that Councillor Bradrick can?
Did Councilor Bradrick second it?
She
Sorry.
seconded.
Oh, sorry, I
So
didn't know. I must have been
So,
second.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
Councillor
fine.
Riley moved
Okay.
it.
So then that's
So
fine.
she's nodding yes, a friendly amendment. She's good with that.
So
I think
through the mayor and the
that's-
rest of council, that's how it'll appear in front of you.
Okay.
Okay, so that will be out. And you can see that the second part is there as a friendly amendment made by both councillors.
Hit send. No, hit the green one.
Yeah, I voted twice, so it should be 8-0.
Should be 8? Okay, well, it's not, still 7. Didn't take you twice, too bad.
So the other item,
Okay, so can we, do you want to continue? Because
well,
this
yeah.
is now open
Yeah, so
to other members
are
of
you just going to
council.
start one side and work
I
your way
was just
across?
going to
Okay,
go
that's
around.
fine.
Is that okay?
Yes, yes, that's perfectly
You okay to
fine.
wait and separate your items?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to come back around to this side and say, Councillor Maychak, is there anything you want to raise this evening? Okay, and Councillor Bradrick, well, you might come back pretty soon anyway. Councillor Trombetta?
All right.
Well, there you go, we're back
Perfect.
around, but at least we've done it. for
All right,
you.
hopefully this one's quicker. So, as many of you are probably aware, we're seeing an abnormal amount of increased crime in our community. And so, in watching this, and everybody can, has a personal connection to how this is impacting them. And as a family man myself with 4 young children, I'm very concerned the direction of where society is going in Niagara, and more specifically what's happening here. And so one of the things I think we need to do, I know Niagara policing isn't our jurisdiction or our authority, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to be able to, I don't know if we put a resolution or something forward to the Niagara region to actually have them reach out to the Niagara Regional Police to understand what strategy are they going to implement that's actually going to be effective to combat municipalities like ours that doesn't have very much police protection. And it seems right now that's being realized and recognized by a strategic group of individuals who seem to be hitting houses between the hours of 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. And just in my neck of the woods, there's a gentleman who had his pickup truck stolen around 3:25 in the morning. And so when I checked my property cameras, I found a very similar vehicle that he believes was checking out his place going through our area around 1:30. And that's on about 3 of my cameras. So we have a unique situation that this isn't just a random act of crime. I think this is very calculated, and I think we need to be able to send a request to the region to ask them if they will have the police kind of prioritize how they're going to protect the municipalities like ours, because I think this is only going to get worse because they're getting away with it, and they're getting a slap on the hand if they ever get caught when they do. So, and I don't think they're getting caught because they're being strategic about it. So that's my ask out there. I would ask if we could consider maybe a general resolution, if that's the consensus of council, just to advocate that concern to the region, and that the region department disperse it to the police. I don't know if we can ask the police directly, because again, that's not really.
Yeah, it's not ours, but I think that we have a new staff sergeant coming
Yeah.
as of February to our area. We have him coming, specifically to speak. Before we go through a resolution, I think we need to, as a municipality, reach out directly to our new staff sergeant.
Okay.
And express those concerns.
So is that
I think
something that we leave with you?
that's
because
something
you're
that we can do once he's in place.
No,
I don't have a problem with that.
But I mean,
And
in
I
the
also
meantime.
don't have a problem with just saying, after further discussion at our council meeting, we've decided that this is our first step. I see that, and I could be wrong, but I see that being much more effective with a new person coming in, being responsible for our area.
Okay.
I'm sure they're watching. I'm sure they're.
I'm sure they're
see
well
that
aware.
Niagara 411 reports are on.
Yeah.
I think they're following all of that. I hate to say it out loud, but I just see that going nowhere to go through the region.
I want
to
the most
Police Services
effective
Board.
mechanism possible. So if you believe waiting till they come here,
Yeah.
if we can kind of grease the
Well,
wheels a bit in the
next week is
meantime.
February,
So-
and he will be in place. So let's
Okay.
call that our starting place.
Okay.
Keep in mind that we might need to go further, but let's start locally by addressing the concern locally,
Okay.
if that's okay with you.
I
think that.
The reason is too, like we kind of know if you're not the squeaky wheel and you're not bringing it front center, you're going to be an afterthought. And so this is something I think we need to get ahead of it before it gets worse. And I
Well,
think it's already worse. So I
And
don't know
part
how
of our
much worse it
issue
can get,
has
so.
been, Division 8, District 8, has been a really good training ground. We've not kept a district chief for very long because they get promoted and they go elsewhere. And so that's happened in I think 3 times at least in the years that I've been here. So I think we need to build a relationship with that person, that staff sergeant, and express our concerns maybe more personally.
Okay. If you could
to
just,
start with. But
if you get a chance to communicate with them beforehand, if you could just let them know that's going to be, so you can kind of come with some answers.
we can
that'd be
talk about
awesome.
the rest moving forward, and we
Okay.
can ask him to come before council,
Thank you.
for sure. So,
Yeah, and
Councilor Trombetta.
that was just gonna sum up what Councilor Riley said there, was just have them back in, like our regional portion of the taxes, the majority of it was with policing
go to
anyways.
policing, exactly.
So they can be held at least accountable for the increase, and I complained, I think in the summertime when I was doing it virtually, that we weren't getting any kind of police presence up here, and they said Grimsby has 2 and nothing has changed, so I think it would be, I guess, through you, Madam Mayor, and through, I know he's not here, Councillor Whitavine, to put some pressure on them to come in, hold them, well, myself, a little bit accountable because of the ongoing crime that's happening everywhere, and ask the questions we need to ask. We tried to ask those questions during the last time I think they were here in the summertime, but I think it's worth them coming.
It is worse. I think it's worse
So.
as well. Yeah, and I think that Grimsby and Lincoln are finding the same things, quite honestly. So I think it's time to make our concerns known. But I think we'll start by letting that person get into place. There's no point talking to somebody who's leaving. So, Councilor Rayner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You and Regional Councillor Whitavine approved the ridiculous 9.6% increase based on the police budget, so I assumed they would come here. But I don't know if they really want to come here, because last week I was walking my dog and there was one cruiser that came along concession 2. It's about one of the first times I've seen it in a long time. I was about 100 feet away. I waved at him. He looked at me and drove away. So I don't even think they want to be around here anyways. I don't know. Usually they're kind of friendly, but he did not do good PR work. Anyways, that's all I can tell you.
We can't complain about the PR work, but we can complain about lack of service.
All he had to do was,
I think I saw you when it came around.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Chichok, anything that you'd like to raise this evening? Nothing. Councillor Rayner, do you have anything this evening?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, so actually I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Riley, because what I have is actually about the Transit Commission.
Yes.
Do you want to, are
So
you
I don't
prepared
have
to
it
speak
printed-
about that?
I don't have it printed out. I could probably bring it up real quick, but yeah.
Okay, well, I just have a jot note, and
If you can make
and
the
I-
note, if you got it handy, go
Okay,
ahead.
so Wednesday, February 5th, among everything else, we want some input into Niagara Regional Transit. And we did reach out to get involved in making sure that West Lincoln was included in the 10-year strategic plan that they are doing. And so they are doing a traveling roadshow essentially to all municipalities to get input as to what people want during the next 10 years. And so Wednesday, February 5th, at our community center, between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m., they will have an area set up. They're not going to do a presentation. They're hoping to just get input from people going by. They were looking for a time when hopefully there are enough people going in and out of the building that they might be able to capture people. But as well as that, there's an online version of that. And so in finding that online today, our communications person actually has pulled out and we're going to post around just so council know as I hit that. And it also provides the website that people can actually answer the survey online. If they happen to miss the 3 to 6 timeline on the 5th of February, then there is a survey that they can take. So anything further that you want to add to that?
So we just got that today, just before noon. And I know you mentioned, I think, or shortly after, that Comms was going to go and create something, so I'm assuming that's going to come out sometime tomorrow,
That's what she's
hopefully.
working on, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's such an important, and one of the things was it last month, I believe it was. Yeah, I think it was at the last council meeting. We had put our request to maintain and make sure you don't forget about us and keep us a part of the conversation regarding the transit master plan. And I think this is definitely a response to that, not just to us, but other municipalities. I think it's
Exactly.
very valuable. Again, as you already mentioned, it's the 5th at between 3 to 5. Kind of wish it was a little bit later in the evening, personally.
Did yours say 3 to 5? I have 3 to 6.
Oh, sorry, I was looking at the other one. Yeah, it is 3 to 6,
Okay,
but still,
good.
I was hoping it would be like a a 5 to 8, quite
Much
frankly.
longer,
But
yes.
you're right, it is 3 to 5. It's on the 5th. So, but regardless, I certainly hope that many people can help us get the message out in the community because, again, they need that feedback, and if they don't get it, then, again, we kind of go right back to square one. And but yeah, other than that, if you want me to highlight details on it, it really is them breaking down and understanding this is the purpose of engagement, and they highlight the 4 sections of hours of service, frequency, route coverage, and affordability. And again, right now we get the on-demand and some of the specialized service when it's actually available and not being abused by other people in the community, not our community necessarily, other parts of Niagara. We get very little right now. We certainly want to make sure that that part can be changed. And if we can get those voices heard there, that's great. I'll definitely do my best to be in attendance, but hopefully I can encourage other members of the community to join us as well.
So I'm actually hoping that all members of council, as you're chatting with people in the next little while, will remind people of it, encourage them to get out and take part. We've talked already this evening about how difficult it is to get information out to people, and so this is going to be no different. It's only a week and a bit away, and it's going to take us chatting with everybody that we come across and encouraging them to take part one way or the other, either on the online survey or in person if possible. So
Tom's going to get that out tomorrow? Do you know?
Beth was working on it today, and she's the one that brought me in this that she's going to start putting around and about. So hopefully that helps us to spread the word. So good. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Are there any new items of business? No, only items that require immediate attention or direction from council and must first approve a motion. So don't see anybody dying to put their hand up with that. There are no confidential matters this evening, and that takes us to bylaws. And Councillor Broderick, you have bylaws tonight.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Moved by myself that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2025-01, 2025-02, 2025-03, and that the same shall be considered to have been read a first, second, and third time with one reading and are hereby adopted. And 2, that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and affix the corporate seal thereto, any rule of this council, to the contrary notwithstanding.
Okay, thank you. And someone to second the bylaws, please. Councillor Chichot. Any questions about bylaws? Nothing? Vote can come up. Mr. Clerk. Okay, and so that resolution carries, and so I will declare this meeting adjourned at the hour of 9:10.